Hi, this is Paul. I am heading to Europe on February 12, and I will once I touch down in London, pretty quickly after that, I'm heading over to Ireland and doing the Galway event that I've spoken about with Paul Kingsnorth and Martin Shaw. There might be a few tickets available. I heard some consternation that sort of like we've done in other places, we had sort of cheaper tickets for people with limited resources than more expensive tickets. Unlike the Chino conference, I think all the cheaper tickets are gone. And so it's just the full price tickets left. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link below for that event. And then I'm returning to London. I'm actually flying both ways with Martin Shaw. So I'm really looking forward to hanging out with Martin. And I'm going to an Orthodox service. I'm going to an Orthodox liturgy with Paul Kingsnorth in Ireland to his church. I'm super excited about that. I'm super excited about I will be staying in a monastery in Galway with the Dominican friars, with Connor, who is on my channel. I'm super excited about all of those things. So then I come back to London and I do the ARC conference. And I'm sure I'll have little missives, probably like last time. I know people kind of jump in and out of the membership thing. You might want to be in the membership thing while I'm in Europe because that's usually when I make a lot of membership videos. Um, but then after that, we have more events that are planned, and Cassidy, along with some others, has had a big hand in planning the events for the rest of my time in Europe. So, Cassidy, what do you have for me?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously we have been pretty active in trying to do events with Breakwater. And I think this year we are looking to try to figure out how do we expand to be more helpful in sort of the European area with Estuary and figure out how do we become a resource and really give estuaries what they need. So there's a couple things we're doing this next year in 2025 to help facilitate that. The first, actually, the first thing we're doing is an estuary tour with you. So basically, we'll be going to the Netherlands, Germany, and in the UK, and holding sort of open estuary meetings, similar to what you've done in America, where people can come and participate, get a chance to meet you, but also participate in a live in-person estuary. Breakwater is helping organize that, but we have also partnered with several different estuaries in each of the countries to put on one event that they can all share and come together. And so those are open to the public. They'll be at like a by donation sort of pay structure. Come with no expectations, but if you appreciate what we're doing, if you find value in it and want to help, anything that is donated goes directly to funding the tour, and then anything left over just goes back into events and other resources for the European estuaries.
So Breakwater is covering my expenses for the second part of the trip, which I really appreciate. So.
Yeah. And then, so the first leg of the tour will be in the Netherlands. We will have an open estuary meeting the 21st of February in Leusden. The second will be the 23rd in Mannheim, Germany, and then the third, London, England, on the 25th of February. And if you have any interest or would like to, be informed about all of the details on that, we have a little RSVP sheet that you can find on the save the date, and I'll send all of this to you to Paul so you can put it in the link below, and you can kind of sign up there, and we'll send you guys all the information that you need to know. And it's just helpful for us to know if you're coming or if you have interest in coming to any of those events so that we can plan properly and make sure that it's a really good space for everybody who's coming and we have a good time in these estuaries. And it's great not only to help you meet all of these estuaries who've been inspired by what you do, but I think for Breakwater, it's really good for us as we continue to learn what is it that estuaries are really needing, where do they feel they're lacking, and how as sort of an organization we can come in and fill those gaps. Outside of that, we also have something that we are starting called the Breakwater Exchange, which is basically sort of one-day events that we partner with local estuaries to bring an event for the local communities in the local language. So we obviously have done the 3-day Breakwater Festival, sort of an international festival. We will be doing that in the fall in the Netherlands again. I can't give too much about announcements there, but we definitely have lots in the planning, and that will come out soon. So if you want more information about that event or future events, you can also RSVP for future information and updates. In that same link you do the tour with. Um, but we like the idea of being able to help people more locally because of how big and sort of international our focus is on sort of the Breakwater Festival. We like even going smaller and saying, hey, let's really create more community within these local communities and find a way for people to participate within their local language. So we have our first Breakwater Exchange in Germany on March 22nd. And tickets are already on sale. We've already got a nice group of people coming, but if you want to know more information about who's speaking, what will be going on that day, we also have the link to the website where you can buy tickets and things. So if you are German speaking in the German area, you want to participate in Estuary in your mother tongue, we'll have that. And then obviously we're looking at other things in the future. A lot of things we probably can't officially say, but trying to figure out what is it that Estuary needs and how do we help that, especially in Europe, because that's where most of us main organizers, well, all of us main organizers live. And I think we just have a passion to be helpful to those estuaries, because I think it's a lot harder in Europe for a whole lot of reasons.
It is. I've
But
seen that.
yeah, but that's what we've got going on, and so we're really excited to have you. And so I don't know if there's any other questions or what else you want to kind of explore with all of this, but
Well,
yeah,
for me, again, I like these meetings, and I like, anybody who watches my videos knows I get plenty of time to talk on my videos. I mean, just hours and hours of talking and talking and talking. For me, it's, the reason I like doing it is because I like hearing from you all. I like figuring out what's on your mind, what are your perspectives, what are your stories, and that helps me just get a better picture of the world. And so I'm really looking forward to getting back over to the Netherlands and into Germany and to um, meeting with some of you that I've met already and probably some new people as well. And what I big events like the Galway event will be a lot of talking on stage between
yeah,
people. But these estuary events for me will mostly be listening. What are the things you're thinking about? What's going on in terms of your spiritual or your faith exploration? Where are you standing with respect to churches and why? And those have always been, deep interests of mine. So I'm just looking forward to it, and yeah, and renewing and strengthening the relationships that we built in the previous two events that I've done over there. So
yeah. No, I really find it interesting when you get to that space where you're having the estuary and you're getting people outside from just sitting and listening and taking in content to actually participating. It changes the game in so many ways, and
yeah,
I think it does help you, yeah, put some skin in the game and kind of not forget the human aspect of what we're doing. And so, yeah, it's just been fun to watch. And who knows what will all come of this? But it's been fun to kind of have our hand in it, at least for a part. um, but I mean, I don't know. I'm really interested with you. How I heard you talking with I think his name's Austin from Gospel Simplicity. Is that
yeah,
his
yeah.
yeah, and talking about some of the live events, I'd love to kind of get your perspective of how that has changed your perspective of estuary and what's happening. Because I think with Breakwater, our focus is really to try to get it, whatever's happening online, into more in-person
Yeah.
communities participation. I kind of love to hear your perspective because you've been to so many of these events.
Yeah.
You've participated not only with your own estuary, but with other people's estuaries in sort of this in-person space. How has it been kind of bridging that and moving that into
Yeah.
life?
The there's a tension between big events have economies of scale and I mean I used frequent flyer miles to get to Europe. Um I've got a little bit of help so I don't have to pay for my hotel over with ARC, so that's good. And Galway I'm staying with the monks, and so I if at best, if at all possible, I try to at least, if I can get my expenses covered for these trips, I'm good. Um, and so the big events usually help paying for things. But what I've seen so often with these estuary um, live events is that it's in the smaller groups where people can really, I don't think you can actually, as an individual, experience much transformation unless you can sort of work things out. And for most people, working things out requires talking, and it requires talking and having somebody else listen. And even if you look at, let's say, C.S. Lewis and the story of the Inklings, it wasn't that Tolkien and Lewis and Dyson went and heard a sermon and the lights came on for Lewis. It was the relationship and the talking and the back and forth where I think transformation happens. So the challenge then is to create those groups, create the relationships, and create the context where people can be honest. And in many cases, that means no cameras rolling, no lights on. It's a closed circle, so people can feel a little bit freer to share dangerous thoughts that they have in their mind, and then have that experience. And so I think the Nate Hiles event in Olympia, Washington was just sort of really a peak event for a lot of people. And Nate really put that together well. He really balanced the stage and then the estuary, closed estuary room. He did that great. My I hope to do another I hope to do another retreat like I did at my sister's place. I mean, that was just 12 people. And even
Mhm.
then, we broke up into subgroups of 6 for some time and then back into groups of 12. But that was a powerful event. So, these smaller events are really meaningful. And it's any of, people who, let's say, have experience in evangelical churches, there are youth groups and church retreats that tend to be small group. And so often that's where a lot of big things can happen. And so and I also have a lot of confidence that usually when churches sort of do small group things, they feel the need to have like a Bible study or a book study or something like that. And what I love about the Estuary Protocol is, okay, we don't have to have all read that other book. We don't have to do the Bible study fellowship thing where you had to read your book or you have to be silent. The As I've seen in my every week estuary at Living Stones, the breadth and diversity of concerns that people have can come up in the group. And the estuary protocol sort of helps people naturally sort out in the process, okay, what really do I need to talk about? What
Yeah.
really do I need to hear somebody else talk about for me to grow and to do the kind of changing I want to? So when I talked to Cassidy about this trip, I said, I completely understand if you want to do some bigger events because I know you have to. I mean, I really appreciate you covering my expenses and helping me out in that way because I'll come even if my expenses aren't covered. But so it's super helpful. But I really like when we have smaller gatherings in quieter spaces, and then we can really hear each other because now, again, this is my third trip to the Netherlands and to Germany. And I met some people on the first two trip, and now coming back on the third trip, you know, I might not remember everybody's names and stories, but the more we talk, the more it'll bubble up, and you can just see the relationship strengthen and deepen. And yeah, to whatever degree my presence can just help stimulate people coming out and strengthening those bonds, that's what it's for.
Yeah. I mean, it it gets very difficult in the sustainability question of like, how do you make this all work? How do you make it worthwhile, not only for the people coming, but for all of the people putting in the effort to organize it in the background? And like Matthias, David, and I have been asking that question for a while, and I think we fall in the same camp with you, where we love the smaller events. Like as far as the festival, we don't have any plans of going much more than 100 people, at least at this short juncture. But there's always that question of like, okay, well, do you ever hold a bigger event to kind of be that funding board that gives you a little space to do those smaller events? Because the smaller events, they either have to be really expensive or just not that profitable.
Yeah.
And I think where we're at is like, well, we don't want to make them really expensive
Yeah.
because we know that there's a lot of people who could really benefit from this that don't necessarily have the resources to pay for the expensive ticket. And,
Yeah.
it gets into the questions of like, how exclusive do you want it to be and all of those things.
Yeah.
So I think we've been really trying to figure out, well, how do we find ways to do different size events in different price brackets in different ways. I mean, the exchange is one thing that makes it a little bit easier. The tickets are a little bit less than the 3-day festival because, well, it's one day, and there's a lot of utilizing community effort that makes things a little bit more reasonably priced. And yeah, there's just something kind of lovely about actually being able to do these events in the language that the countries have. But I mean, with the UK tour, we we entertained and tried our best to see, okay, maybe we do a large event because then that can be sort of the big funding body for everything else.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it's not that we wouldn't do a big event, but we kind of realized the time in which we have to plan this, it just feels like we're rushing something. Maybe we just hold off. But we also think it would service everybody better if we had these smaller events
Yeah.
where, people will come out to see you. But what we've found to be really lovely is that even the people who eventually come out to like see the online celebrity or meet the person that they've been like watching eventually get a lot more from the participation part
Right.
and the community part than speaking with someone who,
Right.
is in your ear,
Yep.
all the time from
Yep.
all this YouTube consuming.
Yep.
And so having that space to kind of that incentive to say, hey, come out, take the step to meet people, and then hopefully those connections can eventually be those seeds that help these local estuaries keep going. Because every area we're going to has an estuary group committed to long-term, consistent estuary meetings.
Yep.
And so, yeah, if it can get people the courage to go out and try it, it might give them the space to connect to those local meetings and
Yep.
really grow, in this meeting quest that we've all been on,
Yep.
but in a place that's a lot more grounded and not so disembodied.
Yep.
The internet is just chaos
Yeah.
almost all
and
the time.
I've seen at like the events in Olympia, Washington, and in other places. It's like, okay, yeah, the say me coming is sort of an occasion, but very quickly, at ARC, you sort of have the sense that a lot of people are sort of looking around for a bigger name to, I'm going to drop my conversation with you and go talk to the bigger name. And it's fun if I go to, like Olympia, Washington, people see me, I'm talking to them, and oh, there's Grim Grizz, I want to go talk to him. Oh, there's Chad the Alcoholic, I want to go talk to him. So these events have produced a situation where people are building relationships, not just, it's not a pyramid, a relationship with me. It's a relationship with each other because
Yeah.
Dunbar numbers, I can't have same relationship with everyone. And so those are, and again, this is very church-like for me because that's the knitting that actually creates a community. It's
Yeah.
not everyone's relationship with one celebrity that makes a community. That's just a fandom. What it is everybody's relationship with each other, and the network of those relationships is what actually builds a community. And that's durable and meaningful, and in the long run produces, I think, far more transformation.
Yeah, it's got to be so strange because you have all of these randos that have like shown up on your channel, had these conversations. People are flies on the walls in them. You don't know who has watched what and whatever, but then you get us all in a room, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you said this in this one thing, and I really connected with that, and all of a sudden it's not, yeah, it's not even just sort of like, the celebrity YouTube kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's something far more complicated and interesting, where it's
Yeah.
really like, oh. I kind of know this person, but I don't know them. I've never met them, but now all of a sudden, we get to be in the same room together and share a meal, and we get to go on a walk, and we get to sit around and have these conversations that we've been having online in the room. And it's unbelievable the difference between having these Discord conversations via voice chat, even when you have your video on, versus being in the room
Yeah.
with people.
And the event pricing, I mean, we still really haven't figured out the economics of all of this. There was, when Marcus was putting together the Galway event, I mean, he really struggled with pricing because it's so difficult to know. Because especially an event, I mean, obviously, the more people you have come in, so you've got Paul Kingsnorth, he's local to Galway, but you've got Martin Shaw, he's flying from London. I'm flying from London. And we got to get from Belfast to Galway. And I mean, you've got all these moving parts and there's expenses in this. And then when people say want to travel to an event, especially this is a big deal in the United States because they might have airfare, they might have hotel, and then they've got the event pricing. So, and I know, they're dealing with that with the Midwest Estuary in Chicago in August, trying to figure out how that goes. And I already saw somebody who he's a he's a fairly well-known guy in the corner and on the Discord, saying to me, I just think I'm priced out of Chicago. And I hope that he contacts someone because often what we're able to do is okay, well, John Van Donk was pretty creative in that. So maybe, if you have the money to buy a certain kind of ticket that also buys another ticket for somebody else, or, and so you get creative with all of that. And of course, some people are like, well, why does this have to cost money? But it's like, well, because facilities, sometimes we can get the facility for free. And in many cases, that's why they're so often meeting Christian from churches because I know the pastor, or the pastor knows me. And so he says, okay. But,
But even then,
plain,
you
yeah,
you want to be able to pay for what you're using, right? You don't want to just um, take advantage is the wrong word, but like there is a certain level of like, hey, you're doing something really great for us that's really valuable. We want to be able to pay you something. We want to be able to cover the cost for the people we bring in, and we want to pay them something for their time as well. Um, but that, it costs something,
yeah,
and so you're always sort of trying to figure out, well, what can you afford,
yep,
um, and what are people willing to pay? How valuable is it really?
yep.
And where does that, yeah, price match up? It's incredibly difficult.
It is. It's really hard. And unless you've sort of tried to put together an event, which a lot of our people now have tried to, it's pricing is one of the hardest things to do and to get right. So we'll keep, but again, for me, so much of this is we're, we're building relationships and along the way, as you, Cassidy, and Nate, and Chad, and Sam, and John Van Donk, as we're doing events too, we're learning how to do events, and that's an important piece as well because communities live on events. They really do in many ways. You've got the ongoing interaction, let's say online, but like you said, what happens at an event, I mean, you might think you know who Grim Grizz is until you meet him in person. It's just true. And the same with Chad. And part of the reality is that a number of our people, they're much more shy in person, which is interesting. It's a dynamic of the internet. And so, yeah, if you meet Grim Grizz, you got to kind of nail him down because he sort of moves around. And Chad is actually, he's very transparent online, but he's very quiet. And the truth is that, one of the things I tried one week to get a group from Europe, and one of these times I'll pull it off. We'll do one of our Friday live streams with all Europeans and myself, because we've got a lot of European, really important people in the corner that are really foundational to the effort and giving them more visibility. It's just harder in Europe. The language differences, the differences in state and nationality and culture. Um,
Yeah.
it's that's one thing that I've really appreciate grown to appreciate is that how much harder it is to do in Europe than it is in the US and Canada.
Yeah. Well, and we don't take for granted the people who have come out and support what we do. Like we're just always blown away and so grateful, and just so grateful even the way that people come in and participate and support us as we're doing these events. It's it's really humbling, and it's beautiful to see the small but mighty group that has
Yeah.
come together. And we've had people who've been to all three of the festivals and, just been part of helping us develop what it looks like to have these estuary events. And I mean, obviously, I have a background in event organization, a different kind of event and organization, a little more chaotic and, yeah, different. I was working in comedy, so it was a different sensibility, but there was a lot of that transferred over, but there's that recognition of like, well, this is a new breed of a thing that we're doing. There's certainly people who are doing things adjacent to us. I mean, you could make arguments like the apologetic world or, some of these other people in big idea spaces, but yeah, what we're doing is much more messy and
Yeah.
nuanced and hard to figure out what really is valuable to the people who are participating. Because for us, it's not just about let's get all of these really interesting speakers who have big followings and have people sit in a room and listen to them. It's like, okay, no. You get a couple people who we think would be valuable to add to a conversation, and then you participate in the conversation, you become part of it,
Yeah.
and not just the conversation but also how do we, and this is what we've been thinking about too, and what I've been talking to with some other people in sort of the European estuaries of like, how do you get that sort of participation with people that's outside of just the intellectual,
Yep.
like how do you bring in sort of a physical participation or like um, you know play in not just an intellectual sense but like a real sense. We haven't figured that out fully yet, but it's kind of exciting to like play with it and figure out, you know, what could work. And
Yeah.
not everything you try does work, but
No.
it's, I don't know, there's just something kind of like rare and beautiful about it, but also very scary because you just
Yeah.
have no idea what's going to work.
And I've, it's been interesting. You mentioned my conversation with Austin over at Gospel
Yeah.
Simplicity. When I talk to other YouTubers, and I know that Peterson and Peugeot and Vervaeke all see this too, that in terms of what we've got going in this little corner, it's very unique in that there is a level of participation and a level of engagement. I hear that often from some of the other YouTubers if I talk to them. They say, the engagement in your channel is different. And a lot of them sort of envy it, but they don't quite know how to get there. And so I want to encourage them. Well, if you engaged more people in the corner, you would probably get that because actually it's not just sort of watchers that are participating. It's not a fandom. It's much more of a community. And it's slower,
Yeah.
but yeah, like Austin, after we stopped recording, he was like, something is different with your group than I see.
Yeah, we're all crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of it. But people know each other, and even John Vervaeke has sort of put together a little community around him. It's not the same dynamic. You don't see Christopher Mastro Pietro having his own YouTube channel and doing branding and taking music and stuff from somebody else and putting it together. There's a real and what's so cool is that not, this isn't all from me.
Yeah.
Grim Grizz has contributed critical elements of the culture of the TLC that nobody else has, as has Upcycle, as has Chad, as has Luke, as has Sam, as has Jacob in his corner, as has Manuel and Mark, and I mean, and you, and everybody has there's a collective culture that has developed. And that's, I think, what's really precious. And so these kinds of events just stimulate and encourage more people to contribute to this collective culture. And we will borrow and steal from each other, but this borrowing and stealing is actually what knits the culture together.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like this type of community participation is not uncommon on YouTube. You just often find it in sort of lighter kind of things. Like the Vlog Brothers, I think, were sort of the first mapping of this, where, and they're the ones who started VidCon and all these things, but they had this sort of really engaged personal interaction, and they still do with their fan base, where
Yeah.
it's like their fans got married and all these things. And so YouTube is sort of this perfect kind of place if you want that kind of engagement with the people who watch you. It just gets kind of messier. It really does. And I think it was really interesting. I heard Austin saying that he would have these conversations even if nobody was watching. And then you made the comment of like, well, that's kind of what's happening here because, well, I guess people are watching, but we feel like nobody's watching. And I
Yeah.
think sort of the aim of even a lot of these channels, including mine, it's like, I just really do this so that I can have the conversations where nobody else is watching.
Yep.
And, it gives me, I think for me, wanting to support other people who are in this space much more than I want myself to be some player in the space. Just kind of helpful for networking and stuff. But I much prefer these conversations that are happening in the Discord servers that aren't being recorded, or even another level, these conversations that are happening in these in-person events that nobody's recording, that nobody's watching. And I mean, the last festival we did, we made the decision to not record any of the talks and
Yep.
kind of let it be what it was going to be. And we did that in conjunction with the speaker. So it wasn't like,
Yep.
you know, cutting them out of something. But, it was just so beautiful and lovely the way that people could interact in this different way that we might not ever record anything ever again. Because it's just sort of like, wow, there's something. And I think I already knew this being a filmmaker, but the minute you put a camera in the room, whether you like it or not, it changes the dynamic of a situation.
Yep. Yep.
And we are so conscious of cameras and all of these things.
Yep.
Even if you try to be the most yourself that you can be,
Yep.
it's going to create a different dynamic.
Yep.
And yeah, how do we get to that space where we can live with both? We have this bridge of like, okay, you can't really, I don't know if you can really have Estuary if you don't engage with the online in some way, especially because I think there's so many people like you were talking about that guy who made the comment on the Peterson video, feeling like they're at the window looking in and feel like they're starved. There's
Yeah.
so many people like that who, if you can get through sort of the quirkiness and the weirdness of what it is to like enter these conversations, you have that space to be able to participate in that a little bit, but then hopefully even move past that and really connect with another human being.
Yep.
It's like, it's a beautiful thing. And I do think that something like whatever you want to call this little corner estuary, whatever's happening in this world and like what's happened around you, that's what we're really aiming for. We're not aiming for our ideas to win or even have the right ideas. I think we're aiming to really not lose the humanity of people, learn how to have these conversations for ourselves better, where we can still love people without, I don't know, placating something we don't think is good, true, or beautiful. But also, how do you do that without always escaping to the internet?
Yep. 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 No, I agree. I agree completely. And what I like about the estuary protocol is it helps facilitate this because
Mhm.
sometimes, let's say you have 6 or 8 people, and okay, we've all gotten here and we're all in the same room. What do we do now? And then we can all break up into like two little sub conversations or something. But the estuary protocol just sort of helps. Okay, well, let's have this conversation together. And now that I've been working it every week at Living Stones, I'm more sold on it. And as I said to John and the other pastors in the estuary video I just did recently, I don't think I would work in a church that doesn't have this because I think it is, even though not everybody participates in it, I wish everybody did, but not everybody does. Not everybody necessarily needs to. They have their Bible study groups and they have other things in church
Yeah.
too. But this just really helps, especially people who aren't necessarily going to go to a Bible study. It just helps them have this conversation. And it's just such a useful thing. So
But
I'm
it
super
just,
excited about it.
it gets you participating in a different mode.
Yep.
And this is where I think would be really cool. I don't know if we'll ever do it, but I think it would be really fun to try to have a bigger event where you get some of these, you know, bigger names together and do like a public estuary and see how that goes. I don't know how it would go, but I think that would be interesting to kind of see how the dynamic of the estuary protocol shifts things a little bit so people aren't just on their debate talking points or
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
structured lecture, but like
Yeah.
really having the chance to like meet each other.
Well, maybe they'll
Um,
try that in Chicago. I don't know
yeah,
because could
I
be
don't
an
know.
interesting group to do it with.
Yeah,
I think it would work. I mean, because we're doing it
yeah.
basically with some of our videos where we're doing it online with, let's say, six of us. I think it would work. But I think, again, this is a big part of the experimentation with the live events. And again, I think Nate really set the bar high because getting that mix right,
Yeah.
Nate really nailed it, I thought. And, at some point, I want to start doing live events at Living Stones.
Mm.
I haven't pulled that off yet. It's just hard. I'm a firm believer in when the time is right, it'll happen. And I don't mean that to encourage passivity, but often in leadership, you can just sort of have a sense of, okay, now let's do it. And you might have to wait for a while, but sometimes you have to wait for the event and the moment to find each other.
No, I think there's something, especially in American culture, that's like, you gotta go and you gotta do it now. Yet
Yeah.
there's like a reality and a wisdom to the thing of like, well, sometimes the best idea is sort of left until it flows.
Yeah.
There's all of this time where you try to make something work. And I think we started realizing this back in 2020 or 2019 when we first started talking about doing live events.
Yeah.
We were all kind of like, and this was sort of right as estuary and that stuff was growing. It was not even what it is now, but you had this excitement of like, let's get offline, let's meet in person. And then COVID happens, and you're like, well, what is an in-person event even going to look like? And you just have to wait and wait. And, I think for me, when I ended up moving to Europe, I kind of put a stop to all the things I was doing. And so I thought this sort of live event thing, you know, just was going to have to be a thing that gets put on the back burner for a long time. But, I'm grateful to have found Matthias and to found David and be able to participate in this way. But it couldn't have, it couldn't have flowed and happened the way that it has if I went with my own sort of um, driven instinct to try to make something happen right away.
Yep.
It's just, I think, especially with this, it's so delicate and so uh, complicated in a way that trying to just let it grow naturally and not force something
Yep.
is going to be a way better mode than trying to make something work when it's not ready to.
Yep. Yep. No, I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
Well, we should probably land the plane.
Yeah.
I've got a 2 o'clock. So
Yeah.
um again, Cassidy's gonna send me the links and I'll put them below. I'll put the Galway link in there and then the link for the breakwater events that Cassidy is organizing. And yeah, share this on Discord, share it with your friends. Um, Again, I don't expect we'll have mass numbers come out, but to me, that's the better. So to have smallish groups, better conversation, getting to know each other face to face.
Yeah. And again, I know I guess it's sort of a little bit short notice now. So I think there's going to be some people who aren't going to be able to make it. But
Yep.
again, if you are interested in this sort of thing, whether you're in Europe or not, are looking for help and support and figuring out, okay, how does this make sense? Feel free to just enter the RSVP, get on the mailing list. We will send updates. And there's definitely things we're trying to do to create more resources to help whatever this is, grow a little bit more and make it feel like we're not doing this all on our own.
Yep. Yep. Because we're not. Because we're not. All right. I will end the recording.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Yep.